Dawn, November 10th, 1947. A cold Belgian morning. Guards drag a man across a military courtyard in Charleroi. He cannot walk. His legs have given out completely. He is screaming, begging, his voice cracking through the frozen air. The man who once commanded terror across an entire occupied nation, who ordered the deaths of teachers, priests, lawyers, and fathers, now has to be physically carried to the post where he will die. His name is Louis Collard, and in just minutes a firing squad will end his life. But here's the question no history book asks loudly enough. How does a 24-year-old from a small Belgian town become the man responsible for massacring 27 of his own countrymen? That answer is darker than most people can imagine. If you're new here, welcome to Incredible War History, where we go deeper than the headlines and uncover the real stories behind the most brutal moments in human history. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell, because the story you're about to hear is one that history tried to bury, and we're bringing it back into the light. A nation falls in 18 days, May 10th, 1940. Nazi Germany launches a devastating surprise attack on Belgium. The Belgian army, outmaneuvered and overwhelmed, fights for 18 desperate days before surrendering on May 28th. In fewer than 3 weeks, a sovereign nation, one that had declared neutrality, was erased from the map of free Europe. The swastika rose over Brussels. What followed was not just military occupation, it was a psychological siege. Political parties were outlawed, the press was muzzled, or neighbors began spying on neighbors. And in that suffocating darkness, two kinds of Belgians emerge: those who resisted, and those who saw the Nazi victory as an opportunity to grab power for themselves. Louis Collard chose power. The boy from Ans, born on August 9th, 1915, in the small industrial town of Ans in the French-speaking Wallonia region of Belgium, Louis Collard grew up in the shadow of 2 world wars. The First World War had ended just 3 years before he entered elementary school. He grew up surrounded by veterans, ruins, and a nation still piecing itself back together. By the time Collard reached his 20s, Belgium was drowning in the Great Depression. Unemployment was brutal. Factories went quiet. Young men with ambitions and no futures were easy prey for radical ideas. Enter Rex. Founded in the early 1930s by a charismatic firebrand named Léon de Grelle, Rex began as a Catholic publishing house, Christus Rex, meaning Christ the King. It was supposed to be about faith and morality, but under de Grelle's direction, it morphed into something far more dangerous: a fascist political movement that openly worshipped Mussolini and Hitler, called for the dismantling of Belgian democracy, and promised a purified, disciplined nation. In 1936, Rex shocked the country by winning over 11% of the national vote, and Louis Collard was right there at the front of the parade. Intelligent, organized, and utterly devoted, Collard threw himself into Rex's inner workings. He handled propaganda. He recruited new members. He helped expand Rex's reach into factories, schools, and city halls. His precision, discipline, and cold efficiency made him a favorite of the party leadership. He was not a fanatic who screamed in the streets. He was something more dangerous: a bureaucrat of violence. The occupation and the rise of Brigade B. When the Germans swept through Belgium in 1940, Rex was immediately repositioned as a tool of the occupation. De Grelle was briefly arrested by Belgian authorities, but released after the Nazi victory. He reorganized the movement under German supervision, and Louis Collard quickly became one of his most trusted lieutenants. From offices in Brussels and Charleroi, Collard ran Rex's civilian machine. He directed propaganda campaigns. He built networks of informants who reported on their neighbors to the Gestapo, the Nazi secret state police, and the SD, the Nazi intelligence agency. His organization helped round up Jews and resistance members. Rex militants, under his supervision, participated in German police raids and enforced occupation laws against their fellow Belgians. But the most feared instrument under Collard's command was Brigade B, a paramilitary unit that became notorious across occupied Belgium for its violence, its raids, and its close cooperation with German security forces. When the Gestapo needed local muscle, they called Brigade B. When someone needed to disappear, Brigade B made it happen. By 1943, Léon de Grelle had left for the Eastern Front to fight with the Waffen-SS, the military wing of Hitler's SS. With de Grelle gone, Collard effectively became the operational brain of Rex's civilian structure. He was 30 years old. He controlled one of the most powerful collaborationist organizations in Western Europe, and he was just getting started. The Courcelles Massacre, 27 dead at dawn. By the summer of 1944, the war was turning. Allied forces had stormed the beaches of Normandy in June. German troops were retreating across France. Belgium's liberation was weeks away. The resistance intensified. Attacks on collaborators multiplied. And in that desperate, violent atmosphere, Louis Collard committed the act that would seal his fate forever. August 17, 1944. Members of the Belgian resistance ambushed a car traveling through Charleroi and shot Oswald Engelbin, the Rexist mayor of Charleroi, along with his wife and his son, 3 people dead in seconds. The Rexist leadership erupted. Within hours, Collard and Victor Mathis, and the acting national leader of Rex, ordered revenge, not against resistance fighters, against civilians. Rexist militiamen fanned out across the neighboring town of Courcelles and dragged people from their homes in the middle of the night. Teachers, shopkeepers, local officials, engineers, lawyers, and Father Pierre Harmonier, a 66-year-old priest who had publicly criticized the Nazi occupation. He had done nothing but speak truth. That was enough. Dozens of civilians were locked in a cellar in a requisitioned house. They had no idea what was about to happen. Some prayed, some wept. Outside, the Rexists started the engines of their vehicles, not to drive anywhere, but to drown out the sounds of what was coming. At dawn on August 18th, the prisoners were taken out in groups and shot. 27 people were killed, and witnesses later testified that Louis Collard was present, not watching from a distance, but commanding the operation from the center of it. He was seen carrying petrol. He was seen lighting fires. He did not look away. German propaganda newspapers immediately announced that 20 terrorists had been shot in justified retaliation. In reality, not a single resistance fighter was among the dead. Every victim was a civilian. Every execution was a war crime. 3 weeks later, Allied forces entered Belgium. Rex collapsed overnight. The fugitive Collard fled. He and Mathis moved through a disintegrating Germany toward Switzerland. Swiss border authorities turned them away. They ran to the Austrian Alps. Mathis was captured quickly. Collard disappeared into the mountains. He had already been sentenced to death in absentia. Belgian intelligence agents hunted him for months. In February 1946, they found him, hiding in the Austrian city of Innsbruck. With him were 20 Belgian SS men and his wife, Huguette. He had been in hiding for nearly 18 months. He was brought back to Belgium in chains. The nation he had helped to terrorize was waiting for him. The trial, 97 defendants, 147 witnesses. The trial that followed was unlike anything Belgium had ever seen. On May 21, 1946, in the Salle Concordia in Charleroi, Belgium opened the largest war crimes trial in its history. 97 defendants were charged with participating in the Courcelles Massacre. At the head of the accused, Victor Mathis and Louis Collard. Collard walked in thin, tense, wearing a long overcoat and steel-rimmed spectacles. His prisoner number, 55, was pinned to his chest. From the very first day, he adopted a strategy of calculated amnesia. When prosecutors questioned him about the massacre, he rubbed his forehead and muttered, "It is absolutely impossible for me to remember anything." When witnesses testified they had seen him carrying petrol and setting houses on fire, he smirked and replied, "I do not remember, but I recall there were at least 15 people with me, and I did everything myself, did I? What were the others doing then?" When accused of being drunk before the killings, he laughed and said, "I have only chaotic fragments of memory." But 147 witnesses dismantled his performance piece by piece. One of them, a former Rexist named Jean Navarre, he told the court directly that Collard had ordered him to gather intelligence on Belgian Freemasonry, a list that fed directly into the assassination of Jules Irno, a prominent university director and politician. Other witnesses confirmed his role in the killings of Alexandre Galopin, a powerful industrial leader, François Beauvais, a former minister of justice, and Louis Brafort, president of the Brussels Bar Association. He had not simply been following orders, he had been issuing them. On August 3rd, 1946, the verdict came down. Louis Collard and Victor Mathis were sentenced to death by firing squad. The final hours awaiting execution, Collard attempted suicide. He survived. His mental state deteriorated, swinging between cold arrogance and complete despair. He spent his final months in a small, isolated cell. November 10th, 1947. A gray Belgian dawn. 27 Rexist collaborators were scheduled to die that morning, the same number as the victims in Courcelles. It was not a coincidence. It was justice, measured precisely. Collard was placed in the first group, scheduled for 7:30 a.m. He smoked a last cigarette. His hands shook. His face had gone pale and sunken, hollowed out by months of terror and waiting. When guards came to collect him, he could not stand. His legs had given out completely. They had to carry him across the courtyard. He begged. He wept. He screamed. At the post, the ceremony of military law demanded he be stripped of rank first. The insignia were torn from his coat. A priest stood beside him, offering final absolution. Collard was weeping quietly now, lips moving in prayer as the priest made the sign of the cross. A red cloth was pinned to his chest to mark the target. The commanding officer raised his sword. At exactly 7:36 a.m., the rifles fired. Collard slumped forward. He did not die immediately. His body trembled. He was screaming in pain. The priest stepped closer and delivered final absolution a second time. Then a gendarmerie officer drew his pistol and pressed it to Collard's head, the coup de grace, and fired once. It was over. The man who had ordered 27 civilians to their deaths at dawn met his end the same way. At dawn, with rifles in a Belgian courtyard. 32 years old. What history remembers. Louis Collard was not a monster born in darkness. He was a young man with intelligence and ambition who chose the wrong side, and then chose to stay there, deeper and deeper, until there was no way back. He could have refused. He could have disappeared. Thousands of Belgians resisted. He chose to kill. The victims of Courcelles, the priest, the teachers, the lawyers, the fathers, were ordinary people who did nothing wrong. Their names deserve to be remembered louder than his. History does not always deliver justice on time. But on November 10th, 1947, in a cold courtyard in Charleroi, it arrived. You've just watched the full story of one of World War II's most chilling collaborators. If this story moved you, if you believe history like this deserves to be told honestly and without flinching, then subscribe to Incredible War History right now. Hit the like button. Drop a comment below. Do you think justice was fully served? We read every single one. More stories like this are coming. You don't want to miss them.